Dean Obadallah. He wants to be your Muslim friend.
Most Muslims, I know many, are great people.
Watch this.
People.
You're listening to the Dean Obadallah Show, where comedy meets politics and all things in between.
And welcome back to the Dean Obadallah Show, Monday, August 12th. And who is here in studio? The one, the only, Elie Mystal, editor of Above the Law, which you should be reading, especially if you want to follow the Kardashians and everything she's doing in school and law school. We're joking before.
Gosh.
But Above the Law, and he's a stalwart, a firecracker, a fire starter on MSNBC all the time. Elie, nice to see you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
We're hoping that this appearance results in at least 2 Newsbusters articles and one in Mediaite. Because of anytime, Elie, because I was on with you yesterday, and I'm like, there's a few things I'm going to write these down. They'll go on. Right-wing media is going to pick these up.
Right-wing media loves to jump on my Twitter feeds and jump in my Facebook feeds and just hate on me. And I think the reason why is because they are not used to dealing with an emancipated black man. And so I'm scary for them. I mean, look, obviously I come off as particularly angry because I am.
Right.
Right. And it's that anger mixed with blackness is something that right-wing media really thinks scares their people. So I'm kind of popular on their air.
They find you, they put your clips everywhere, and I'm sure the right way, look at that guy, and whatever garbage they want to say. Look.
It's okay. I just upgraded the security cameras in my house. I'm fine.
Oh, you did? They used to. There was a time as a Muslim when I would go on anything, they would do that. But Muslim has become less of an issue for them a little bit. I'm not quite sure why. I'm happy that it is. That it is not as important to them, but it's coming up. But here's a weird thing that happened today. Ayman Mohadeen, who's a buddy, he's a friend of mine. I didn't say buddy, he's a friend. And he was guest hosting. And to me, this was a stunning. Kelly O'Donnell is on. I don't know if you saw what happened. And so Ayman makes a statement. He's anchoring, and she's reporting outside of the White House, out of the country club where Trump is hiding.
In Jersey?
In Jersey. And he said, we know the president has a preference for immigrants from Nordic countries. He's made that very clear. That's what Ayman said. And she said, I don't know the president's expressed a preference for Nordic countries. And that's not something, she goes, I don't know where you get that from. Like on air, she said to him. And
what?
I'm like, do you not follow the news?
I get
like
it
you
from
work for the news.
The Twitter account of the president of the United States, because that's what he says. What does she mean she doesn't know where he gets it from?
But it's to say that to an anchor on air, like, I don't know where you get that from. And he didn't fight back with her on air, but it got picked up by some of the media going, because her tone was like, I don't know, that's something, I'm not where you get that from, I don't know. Like, from his lips, from the reporting, we all have people from Norway and not S-hole countries. We all know that. Where have you been?
It's the kind of thing, and this is where it's always useful to talk about white privilege a little bit, because I don't if you're white, there's a part of this story that I think you miss sometimes, right? And it's these little these little jibes of baseline disrespect that as the person who's receiving it is happening in part because you're not white, but they don't rise to the level of you actually saying nope, we're gonna stop everything right now and talk about race. They don't right. So you're always in this kind of it's almost like an allergy, right? Where they throw something at you and it makes you sneeze and you don't like it, but you're not gonna put the EpiPen into your veins, right? You're just gonna try to keep stepping. Yeah, that's some BS.
And I think it's I was talking to Leo. You were here when Leo was on. Leo was talking about the issues that are important, and it wasn't saying white supremacy is not important, but he's like, here are other issues. And I try to make the point, because people of color understand why white supremacy is important. And of color includes Jewish Americans now, because there's been 2 attacks on synagogues in the last 6 months in America, in October and in April, and one in California. So this is what's going on in our country. So for us, it's very, very personal. It is life and death. It is not a policy discussion.
So there are 2 things I would like to say to Leo. The first is that there are a lot of black and brown people who are very concerned about climate change too. However, it's a little bit hard for us to get all the way up the mountain on that when the cops keep shooting us, right? So I also would like to make sure that I only have paper straws and not plastic straws. But when I'm going to the grocery store, my first concern is surviving the cops between my house and the store, not so much the straws I'm going to buy at the store, right? So, and I say I'm being a little bit jokey, but the important thing to understand is that because of what white supremacy does in this country and does to its victims, it is hard to recalibrate and rebalance around other issues when you constantly feel under attack. Non-white Americans there are a lot of them, and you're not going to get climate change happening, significant climate change proposal without their support. And one of the ways to free up their support is to free up their time by stop electing white supremacist people. That's number one, right? Number two is that so much of kind of interpersonal racism also plays itself out as environmental racism, right? The communities most likely to get flooded, to get droughted, to get whatever, are communities of color. We are the communities that don't get the resources for the environmental protections that we need, right? So like where I live, up in the suburbs, like I'm going to be fine when the floods come, right? They ain't building a nuclear power plant next to me. They're not, there are things that they're not doing in my neighborhood that they will do in poorer neighborhoods, right? So that's a huge issue. You were talking about how you've had on, and he's great. I suggest Leo take a look at this man's Twitter feed, Mustafa Santiago Ali. He talks a lot about the intersection of environmental racism and white supremacy, and how that combines to keep people of color down. And so one example that he said to me, I think when I was on TV, when he said it, that so clicked for me, was when it was when the hurricane was coming and it was going to maybe hit Houston, and so they were kind of thinking about evacuating people. Right. It turned out to be kind of a dud of a hurricane, but they were talking about evacuating people, and Mustafa was saying about how people are actually, because this was when Trump was threatening to do all the raids, that black and brown citizens in Houston were locked in Houston because they were afraid of leaving Houston to take shelter from the storm, because if they left, they might get picked up by ICE and not be able to go back home. Right.
I mean, what a stunning point to make.
So so that the combination of white supremacy with environmental factors is actually part of the huge problem. So I understand Leo's point there. The climate crisis is our biggest crisis as a people. My point is that we will not solve that crisis as a people unless we stop being racist to black and brown people.
And I remember we had a conversation yesterday, like in the commercial, I think, before going to Joy's show, that people accuse you of everything being about race. Why do you have to make everything about race? And the reality is, so many things in this country that are not visibly about race are actually underlying are about race. It's more nuanced, and you make that excellent point. And Mustafa's come on many times to talk about environmental racism, environmental justice. And I think, like, I was looking back at Kelly O'Donnell's comment. In a way, white privilege would be you don't remember Trump's comments about Norway because you're white. Because it's not like she's an intelligent, but she's the White House reporter. She knows what's going on. Yeah. Doesn't register. She heard that maybe. I'm sure she might be like, oh, yeah, I forgot that.
It doesn't register as like, oh, my God, I can't believe he said that.
But it must be bizarre for her to watch like Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker use the word shithole at the debate. And because like, why are they saying that? Why is no one bleeping? This is crazy.
That's so wrong.
Why would anyone say shithole during a national debate? Because they're literally quoting Donald Trump. That's why. So, like, this is, I imagine someone afterwards, and that's why Eamon didn't fight back on it. They glossed it over. I'm sure afterwards maybe had a conversation. But all right, so hang on. Go ahead. I just say, of course.
Right, like when I talk about how things are related to race, there are people, predominantly white people, who think that is a reductive argument, that I'm trying to simplify it, that race isn't such a simple answer. It's actually much more complicated, right?
Right.
In fact, racism itself is extremely complicated. It is extremely, and if from an academic perspective, fascinatingly complicated how a person walking around this earth believes that they are better than another person walking around this earth because of the color of their skin. That's shocking. That's so weird, right? It's so strange that people will consistently vote against their own economic interests just because some crazy white man promises to be mean to the darkies, right? Like people will lose money for that. That's nuts. And so when I talk about racism, when I reduce things to racism, I am not being simplistic. I am saying that there is a complicated set of factors and supremacy and privilege and issues that metastasizes into certain people in this country being able to look at children being made to suffer and not care. That's weird. That's strange. That deserves study and comment and analysis, because that ain't natural.
I agree with you. And I was looking for something to your point. It's a conversation I had on the show last week about, and I wish I can't find it right now, but the idea of whiteness, as we know, is a social construct in America. That's what it is. It means it's invented. And whiteness means nothing. It literally is, the only reason whiteness means something is our society's given it a certain clout and power based a lot on majority status in terms of people. But, James Baldwin, and I wrote, it was but his essay on whiteness, that, the price of certain communities that they paid to get their white ticket, which to subjugate black people, like other minority communities came in who were, say, Italian or Irish or whatever. That was one part of it. It's like they were working with the white people who were here already, the nativists, to put down people of color, and then they got their white card. They sort of earned it. Then there was an historian, Nell, Nell, I can't remember, but she had another point that was very interesting about whiteness, that in the 1880 census, the nativists didn't like the Italians and the Irish and all them coming in. But this showed in that census that their birth rates were low, and they were fearful of blacks and others, Asians and stuff that were here, that were going to eclipse them. So they welcomed these immigrants into the white world out of self-preservation. Yeah. And that was a very interesting thing, because and they all make the same point. The same thing when, Ta-Nehisi Coates says that liberals were not being dotards, I think is the word he uses, when we say that race is a social construct in America, because it's absolutely true. It is invented by us in our country, and I'm the living, breathing manifestation, because pre-9/11, it's not a joke, it's simplistic, but I was white. I was treated white. All my friends were named Monica and Joey and Chandler. I was like a white guy, right? My life changed after 9/11. I am now a minority. It took a long time. I fought it. I wanted to stay white, because you don't realize what white privilege is until it starts losing it. Right. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God. So now I'm telling you, I joke, I'm Malcolm X in a polo shirt. Like, I am angry, but first I'm going to go to Starbucks and get a Frappuccino. Yeah, but I'm still angry about stuff. Like, I'm like, white devil, make my Frappuccino. I mean, right now. So,
it's that Chris Rock joke, like, ain't now you want to trade places with me, and I'm rich. Y'all want to just ride this white thing out a little longer, right? No, look, it is a social construct, but I come at it from this way, and I do this. I have this patter about my children, one of whom just turned 4.
Congratulations!
While I was being dragged on,
that's right.
That's why I couldn't respond. I was literally at my kid's birthday party. But anyway, all right. So my kids are 1/4 Zimbabwean, right? So 1/4 straight up African immigrant, right? They're 1/4 Haitian. That's some Zimbabweans from my wife's side. 1/4 Haitian from my side of the family. For the other 2/4, right? You have to start going to eighths, right? Oh, wow. So for the other 2/4, they are 1/8. They're 1/8 freed slave. So 1/8 straight up African American. We can trace a person all the way back to a man named Pittman who was freed by Sherman when he came through. Okay, so we got 1/8 straight up African American. That's my reparations money, right? 1/8 Chinese, 1/8 Chinese. My full name is Elie Mystal. 1/8 Scottish through my wife. 1/8 Indian. Also through my wife, right?
Not Native American, Indian.
Indian from India.
Okay.
Right? So Indian, Scottish, Chinese, African American, Zimbabwean, Haitian. Tell me whether or not my kids can dunk a basketball. Tell me if my kids are going to be good at math. Tell me if my kids can park a car. You can't tell me because you don't know, because it's all bullshit, right? So when you start talking about what race my kids are, when you break it down by eighths like they used to in slavery times, you can't tell me what race they are. But I'll tell you what race. But I tell you what race they are in America, and this is where I push back against the social contract. The race is just a social construct. They are black. And we raise them as black. Because you know why? Because when the cop sees them, they are black. So the cop then represents what the government is going to do to their lives versus what they would do to your life, what they would do to my best man at my wedding who has a white guy from Maine, what they would do to his kid's life, right? Is the cop's ability to come into your house, bust up your car, break down your door, deny you opportunities because they perceive you as black. That makes my kids black. I don't care what else they have going on. For all intents and purposes, they are black, and they must be raised that way and trained that way, and they must understand what that means in this country. So while, yes, in a kind of academic, conceptual way, race is just a social construct, right? But in a practical sense, my kids have to be ready to be black men in America. And that is going to mark their upbringing, education, and experience in a way that their white friends at kindergarten do not have to deal with.
And to that very point, I remember a caller, and it stayed with me maybe 6 months, maybe a year ago. I can't recall. And I was using the term African American. And she said, just call me black because I'm treated the way I am by the police in our society, not because of my African heritage, but because my skin color is simply black. I'm like, oh, boom. You can't get more powerful than that. That made all the sense in the world. And then when we had the conversation about Senator Harris, Kamala Harris, people who called here, even they didn't like her politically or whatever, were like, she's black because she's treated as black in our society, no matter what. Doesn't matter if she's half Indian because she's part of half Indian. Yeah. She appears as a black person. She's treated like a black person. Literally bused to a school when she was a kid. We learned in the first debate. So she's black, and I get it.
It's so different in other places. That's why when we talk about it as a social construct, it's an American social construct. You know, you were just talking about Kamala Harris. That's basically my wife's ethnicity, right? Half black, half Indian. And in Zimbabwe, that means a whole different goddamn thing, right? Because in Zimbabwe, they have a whole different like classification for what you would call a person who looks like my wife versus what you would call a person who looks like me, even though my wife and I are actually probably more, you know, like it's all, every place, every country, every region, like rates people, judges people differently based on this bull crap.
That's why it's a social construct. It's actually correct. Now, I've been in the Middle East. When I was a full-time comedian, I did shows from Egypt through Saudi Arabia. I produced a comedy festival for 3 years in Jordan, and we instantly learned doing the jokes, and this was the simplest way of doing it, that our jokes about race that work in America didn't work there because their perception of race was different, except for one, that black people are cool. And if you're playing on that about certain celebrities, because they get pop culture and Facebook, so they understood that kind of joke. Because there was a time, a few years after 9/11, I used to do a joke, and technically it's not right, I get it, but it was a joke. Let me go on this one here. That Arabs are the new black, that was this, people have all heard that, whoever's the new black. And just wanted the joke. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That means in the future, white kids, to be cool, start dressing Arab, you know, walk around going like, you know, where are my Arabs at, that kind of stuff. And that kind of worked there. But if you did jokes about how, I remember being with an American comedian who did a joke in America about Asians can't drive. Stupid stereotype, but it gets a laugh every time in American comic clubs. If you're not just saying that, but doing a joke about that. I'm not. It's great, right? He did it there in the Middle East. Everyone just stared at him. Like, and afterwards they'd come up and they go, "Why can't Asians drive?" You're right. You're right. It was a stereotype, an American stereotype of race. We have so many stereotypes of race, and their racism is towards other people. I'm not saying it's not towards black people too, but when you're in Egypt, you're in Africa, so it's not. It's a different type of black person. Let's say it's different than that, and it might be against. They have a lot of domestic helpers there who work there from the Philippines and from other countries, and their racism is more direct at them. And there were comics there doing, there were comics who were like Egyptians doing jokes about the workers. Who, like, I'm like, you can't do that. It's horribly racist. They go, why? The audience is laughing. Go, that doesn't make it right. You can't make fun of the people who work for you and how you're so mean to them. And the crowd's like, yeah, you have to yell at them. I'm like, no, that's.
Oh, no, look, I got off the plane, and the first time I went to Zimbabwe to visit my wife's family, I got off the plane, and, it's the first time I've been to Africa. So I'm getting off the plane like, I am home! Welcome me! And they're just like, you dumb-ass American, where's your cowboy hat, buddy? I was like, cowboy hat? Like, they thought, first of all, they marked me as American, like, before, by the time I got onto the tarmac, right? And that was the thing. They started calling me cowboy. Now, I'm from New York. I hate I don't like going west of the Hudson, much less the Mississippi, right?
City Slickers 3 with Elie Mystal.
But from their perspective, I was American. I should be wearing a cowboy hat. I should be wearing a cowboy hat and having a revolver. That is an American for them, right? So again, you're everybody who says it's a social construct is right, but unfortunately in this country, that social construct has really serious negative, disastrous consequences.
All right, let's take a break. We had all these legal issues we're going to talk about, and of course we got a conversation about race again. Because I could talk about race all the time. Like I'm amazed by
and bad jokes in Egypt. We're talking
about. I am sincerely, and I've talked about race so much on this show, and there are probably people go, enough about race. I am so sincerely intrigued about our history of race, how racism has been used to keep people in power, how we still see trappings of it today, that we see the same things instead of poll taxes and literacy tests, we see voter ID laws. We're just seeing it interchange. You see this, and you made a great argument on Joy Reid's show when they used the economic argument
Yep.
and about T-shirts after Civil War. What were you saying?
That was just saying that there's the racism and oppression always has an economic argument attached to it.
Right.
So there was probably somebody back in the day at Antebellum Cycle talking about how I'm not here for the racism, but these cheap cotton tees are just too good to pass up.
Right.
That was probably a guy, right? Because it's always been tied to some kind of BS economic argument. What we have seen, however, is that in the long arc of history, those economic arguments do not save people from the judgment of history. That with enough perspective, we see their racism for what it is, and whatever economic grievances they had at the time don't really matter 50, 100 years later, when people are thinking about whether or not that society or that group of people acted honorably or not.
So let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll take a few phone calls. Dana from Maryland wants to talk to you about how much she's a fan. So we'll come back. We'll take your call, Dana, and a couple other calls as well. Then we got to talk about it. You're a legal guy. I've got to talk about a few legal things with you, especially about the ICE raids and why they arrest 600 immigrants there trying to make a living, and they're not charging employers with anything, and it's off the charts. There was a great article today in Washington Post about it, but we'll talk about that. But we'll come back. We'll take a few phone calls, and we'll pivot to that issue right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote preserves all other rights. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not guns. It's voting.
Sirius XM Progress. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show, exclusively on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live August 12th in studio. Elie Mystal is here. Here's Dana in Maryland, who called right away when Elie came on it. How are you, Dana?
I know. Hello.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Hi, Dana.
Everybody. Hi, Ellie. How are you? I think you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my God.
And the dog does too?
Okay. I'm sorry, my dog. Okay, so I had some dental work done today, and I had a little too much Novocaine, and so unfortunately, I watched the Kelly O thing live, and yeah, she's doubling down on Twitter.
Really?
Saying she's accusing Eamon of making a flip comment.
No way. Kelly O'Donnell said, really? I thought they just made a little mistake, and they were like, oh my God, I cannot believe Kelly O'Donnell, by tweeting about it now, all the media is going to pick it up and it's going to cause a fight. And it's not good for Eamon. It's not good for either, but I don't think it's good for a person of color in any kind of fight. I have to be.
Well, it depends. But this is something, and Dana, you'll know that I this is how I would react to it live as well. Like this it also is about how you fight, right? Because like when somebody does what apparently, and again, I haven't seen the tweets, I didn't see it live, so I'm going based on you, Dana. But when somebody does that, they think that they are operating from some kind of moral high ground BS where like they're trying to be the sensible, responsible media and all these people are just trying to be, as she allegedly put it, flip, right? Now, if you kind of accept the premise of that question, well, no, I wasn't trying to be flip. I was actually, then you're already kind of losing, right? So the way that I would handle it is more like, F you, here's what the man said, you make of that what you will. I'm going to say that he has a preference for Nordic countries. If you want to like both sides that, Charlottesville that, you do that your damn self, but leave me out. To keep my name out your mouth. Like that's how Eamon should come back. He probably won't, because he wants to have a job and be nice. But like, and
she's been there a long time. I mean, she's a celebrated journalist for NBC.
But I'm saying, but that's exactly kind of my point. Like when you have people who have this kind of aura of credibility and austerity and respect, accepting the premise of their white privilege BS questions is the way to failure. What you have to do is not accept, and this is a kind of straight up, this is a lawyer 101 thing, right? You have to not accept the premise of their question, not accept the premise that he was being flip. No, he wasn't being flip. He was being deadly accurate based on what Trump said. Right. Goodbye.
Yeah, he didn't say it in a way to score points. He said about immigration, he simply said, you know, as the President Trump has expressed his desire for more people from Nordic countries, just said it like that. And what do you think? And then she pushed back twice, and he didn't come back at her at all.
Yeah, no. See, I would
like, you're okay. You've been here a longer time. Dana, is your teeth doing okay? You got dental work? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I had to get some stuff done this morning, and I have to get a lot of Novocaine. It just kind of made me nauseous. So I happened to be home and hear that live. She got a lot of blowback. It was outrageous. And so I immediately tweeted his exact quote from an article in Vox.
Right, exactly.
He said, shithole countries, and then, Norway. We need merit-based people from Norway. It's out. He says it all the time. Stop fucking trying to cover up for this prick. I can't handle it.
Dana,
Ellie, here's my question. Because I am pissed myself. And that's why we love you every time you're on TV. You should be on TV all the fucking time. Because this is how we feel. Not only are we outraged, it gets disheartening. Okay, so here's my question. Why is the Cooch in this position? How are they Ken Cuccinelli, how are they continually getting away with these people not going through the Senate, because he never would have been, he never would have made it through.
Right.
And why is Stephen Miller, this fucking 33-year-old Nazi, and my grandmother survived the Holocaust. Her family did not. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand how this 33-year-old pussy has gone to make our immigration policy. I don't get how.
Well, that's Trump's doing, right? Trump can pick any advisor he wants. The acting thing is a really interesting point, though, because everyone's acting now. He's not going through Senate confirmations.
Can Trump pick any advisor he wants? Well, that's actually an interesting constitutional question that has not been litigated. And the reason why it hasn't been litigated is because Democrats will not sue him. Democrats will not do what is necessary to stop him. And I'm not saying that here's the thing. I'm not saying that Chuck Schumer could stop Ken Cuccinelli or any of these idiots, given that Chuck Schumer's in the minority, the president gets to name who he wants, and in this particular situation, the president is going away, is not using the Senate at all to get through to put these acting people in. At which point, if I'm Chuck Schumer, I chain myself to the goddamn speaker's gavel and don't move until it stops. Like, at some point, there's like collective action that's needed, and the collective action has to start from leadership. And Chuck is literally the minority leader, and he won't tell. Like, we always say, like, what should we do? What should we do? Like, Chuck is the one who should be telling us what to frickin' do next, and he does nothing. He tries to make deals. He tries to go along to get along. Right. Like, I have real problems with his method of leadership right now, because what is necessary when you are in the minority, and this is maybe a larger point, but like, I don't think that if the Democrats end up in the minority in the Senate after this election, I don't think they have to not reelect Schumer as minority leader. I think one of the differences between being a white male and anybody else, so like a person of color, a woman, a white woman even, like, we're kind of used to being in the minority. We're used to not having the votes. We're used to having to use other forms of action, direct action, collective action, protest. We're used to that struggle because we know that in a kind of one-to-one numbers game, we're going to lose, right? And I don't know that all these white male leaders are used to that. And so I think that what you see in Chuck Schumer is a person who doesn't know how to lose. He knows how to win. He doesn't know how to lose. And what we needed from him was a guy that really understood how to lose, and lose big, and lose obviously, and lose in such a way as to embarrass the other side. And Chuck has no ability to do that.
Chuck will have a press conference behind a podium on a Sunday morning, which he does almost every Sunday, or in the Senate chamber, and expect that to compete with Donald Trump's framing and use of the media in ways that we've never seen before, in an effective way, because the media loves it because it gets ratings. Chuck Schumer doesn't have that fight in him. Chuck Schumer's not the fighter you need. At different times, you can have a Senate leader like Schumer. Right now, no. I don't know who's on the Democratic side. Will be Cory Booker or something, but he's out there running for president.
I mean, look, if she doesn't end up as the nominee, Liz Warren needs to be in that. That'd be interesting. Yeah, to have
situation. She'd be a fighter,
right?
All right, Dana. Thank you, my friend, for the call.
Thanks, Dana. Feel better.
Feel better, my friend. Let's take one more call, then we'll talk about another issue. Here is interesting. Here's Tyrone from Harlem. How are you, Tyrone?
How you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Thanks for calling. You're on with Elie Mystal.
What's up, T?
Yeah, I was thinking about Donald Trump is the self-destruct button for this country. What we fail to recognize is that there are people that understand what it took to get this country. They did a lot of killing, a lot of stealing, and a lot of dealing to take this country. And the people that know what they had to do to take this country, they're not just going to give it back and give it to a bunch of people that they feel is not worthy of it, meaning, the others. Mm-hmm. And they're going to do whatever it takes. They're going to do whatever it takes, and if they feel like they're losing it with this election of Barack Obama, I think that scared the Jesus out of them, and they said, before we turn this country over to a bunch of them, we'll destroy it first. Donald Trump is on his way of doing it.
Look, I've made this point before, and thank you for your call. It's such a good point. One of the things that motivates white supremacy, especially as we're seeing it now, is that fear of being outnumbered.
Yes,
right.
Very much so.
They can read a poll, they can read a demographic trend just as well as you can. They know 2035, 2055, like we're going to be a majority minority country, and they are terrified of that. Democrats, I think, are a little bit too comfortable.
Hang on, you want to know how? Lauren, are you there? Here, this quick 7-second clip shows you how terrified they are. Here's clip number 2 from Charlottesville 2 years ago yesterday.
You will not replace us! You will not replace us!
That's how terrified. That's not a joke. That's literally how terrified. That's the great replacement theory come to life. The idea of white genocide. That is the slogan of that.
Right. So they are afraid, and Democrats are a little bit too complacent because we also we read the polls, we read the numbers, we understand demographically what's going to happen. Frederick Douglass once said, "Power concedes nothing without demand." I think people are wrong to underestimate the white man's ability to enact minority control over this country. Mm-hmm. They have done it all over the world for centuries. Trump is not reinventing a wheel here. He is applying a wheel that has been used in apartheid South Africa, that has been used in India, that has been used everywhere, basically everywhere the British ever set foot, right? And the game here is to institute a way for the white political powers to have more political powers than all of the other political powers, even when the whites are in the minority. And they're doing it with the courts. That's why I keep focusing on the courts. The courts are their easiest way to enact dead hand control over this country, but they're also doing it through the Electoral College and through gerrymandering. And if we do not attack these fundamental kind of structural outcrops of white supremacy, then Tyrone in Harlem is going to be exactly right. That all that will be left will be a country that, as we saw in South Africa, where a majority of minority folks cannot get over the small white minority without significant struggle.
The tyranny of the minority. And the Electoral College is the perfect example where, almost 3 million more Americans who did vote for Hillary Clinton, yet the Electoral College was the saving grace. And that's a device used to empower the minority. And look what's going on in this country, too, on issues like 90% support universal background checks, but they can't support that. They can't get that through Congress for decades now. There's issue after issue, like on women's right, the right to control their own body. Mm-hmm. You see the polling shows solidly on the side of those who want pro-choice. Yet in state after state, we're seeing egregious, draconian laws that are just about oppressing women. In state from Alabama, the worst example. So,
think about it this way: people are always just like, "Oh, well, it's hard to win in the South because of all those white people." In the South, man, you know where black people live in this country?
South.
It's the South,
and that's why there's voter ID laws.
And that's why they have voter ID laws. That's why they have voter
protest
suppression.
Gerrymandering. That's why they have closing voting, getting rid of early voting days and closing voting locations in areas where minorities can go vote, and make it harder for people of color and lower income white people as well to struggle to just simply franchise themselves and cast a ballot. And that's what they do because they understand the tyranny of the minority is their only hope. And they're not going to look. One thing, Tyrone, I don't have to tell you guys, when white supremacy is challenged through our time in history, it is used violence to stay in power. We are seeing this right now. El Paso was part of that. The shooting at the synagogue in October, while killing Jews, and many people view Jews as white people, in America now, they're not white any longer. And secondly, that guy walked in there, Robert Bowers, to kill the Jewish people because in his view, they were helping bring more brown people. That is a white genocide in their view. So they will use violence. And that's what scares me because you have to forget history to not see where we're going. And where we're heading is very scary. And I tell people all the time, I don't tell that to scare. I tell you to prepare. We're our brothers and sisters defenders. And we must be ready for when it comes for one of us, we have to be there for each other because it's going to be awful. Mm-hmm. So, all right, Tyrone, my friend, thanks. I got to go to a break. Thanks for the call. No, I say don't tell them. Sure, I tell. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day
on Sirius XM Progress 127.
And now, more of the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM's Progress.
And welcome back to the Obeidallah Show here with Elie Mystal. Apparently we went to break. We were still talking. I didn't even know. All right, so Lauren's like, you were still talking. It was on air. We were just chatting still. But
talking about going to Canada.
No, that was Elie. Ellie's saying, do you have an escape plan? He's literally, and I'm laughing. And he's like, no, I'm serious. If things really go bad.
I said this before. I talk about with my wife all the time. I do not want to be on the last train out. That's cutting it a little close for me. I don't need to be on the first train out, but like I'm not trying to make the last train. It's like when I go back to Westchester, the last train out from Grand Central is 1:55. I don't try to make the 1:55. I try to make the 1:20. So if I miss the 1:20, I still have the 1:55. Because I missed the 1:55, I gotta go to the YMCA for the night, right?
That's right. That's not.
I don't want to do that, so I try to go for the 1:20. That's what I'm talking about. Like I don't want to be the person that has to wait for them to be on my block before I get out, right?
Well, you have kids, so I understand the concern. And to make matters worse for Elie, I was talking about an article from Neil Steinberg. He wrote it a week after the election in Chicago for the Chicago Sun-Times, where he interviewed Jewish people who said, like Holocaust survivors, who said, history warns us the best thing to do is leave. And some of the Holocaust survivors or their family members were Holocaust survivors said things like this to him. Your neighbors will gladly murder you, given the nod by authority, then blame you for bringing your own death upon yourself. They'll move into your empty house, live there guilt-free, and years later, should anyone be so impolite as to raise the subject of your death, deny it ever occurred. And these are people this is a week after Trump won. This is before the two terrorist attacks on Jewish synagogues. They were people who were Jewish who were like, our history tells us we should be leaving the United States of America now.
Yep.
And at the time, it seemed slightly overblown. And now it seemed completely instinctually correct. Not to leave, but the sense that the fear is not about rhetoric being bad. The fear is someone coming to your place of worship and killing you. And that's happened in the Holocaust and it happened in America twice. And bizarrely, on the 2-year anniversary of Charlottesville, I'm hoping tomorrow the media makes up for it, and maybe they'll go like, well, they really counted the day Heather Heyer died was the 13th, and that's what they'll talk about it. But today, no one covered this 2-year anniversary.
And the scary thing, it's your neighbors, right? It's not your friends, but it is your neighbors. It is the people that you work with and go to school with and whatever. And those are the fuckers that are gonna turn on you when the time comes. So that again, that I do not surface that worry idly. I have worries about it.
So,
the issue is that you're talking about uprooting your entire life, moving to, I don't speak any other languages, uprooting your entire life, uprooting your family's entire life. Like you said, I have children, uprooting their entire lives. On fear is also feels wrong. Like being and not being willing, and I think this is where you were kind of going, not being willing to stay and fight for the country also seems wrong, right? So there's that balance, there's that push pull. That's how they got me so far. But it's not. But I put like this. My children have passports.
They do,
right?
So they're ready. They're ready. I've got a passport. On Sunday, when we were on Joy Reid's show, we talked about these big donors like Stephen Ross, the billionaire who was giving, not just giving money, but holding a fundraiser, and Trump raised millions of dollars. And I think, like when Leo called, I'm not singling Leo out. Leo, you made great points. The idea that there are some white progressives, and especially white people in the middle, who don't get this concern that you just articulated, the one that I share. That this is very real. So when Stephen Ross helps Donald Trump gets reelected and spends millions of dollars, and I think we're going to beat Trump. I say this all the time, and I sincerely believe that. But that people don't get why we're angry at him. Why Joaquin Castro would share the name of donors who are making money from Hispanics but maxing out to Donald Trump. And they go, oh, this is horrible. No, this is life and death.
There are people who still to this day do not perceive Trump as unique. They think he's weird. They think he's a bit crazy. He's got a big mouth and with the Twitters. But they don't perceive him as a unique threat to the country or to their safety. Because he's not a unique threat to them.
That's right.
He's not coming for them. He's coming for other people. And that's how a guy like Stephen Ross can make his peace with it, right? That's how a person can still go to Soul Cycle or Equinox and not feel complicit by it, right? That because they understand that the people who are coming are not coming for them first. That is how they get there. And again, like I said earlier, the moral arc of history will prove these people wrong. The moral arc of history will remember poorly the Stephen Rosses and all of the other, the Kellyanne Conways, and the cadre of complicit, useless motherfuckers who prop up the Trump regime. But that's, they'll be long dead by then too, right? They'll be 100 years from now.
And that's little solace for any family who's suffering or mourning, or a family deported or in prison. And we only got a few more minutes left. We have one more break. We can talk for a few minutes here before we have to take the break. Shift gears completely. It's bizarrely Jeffrey Epstein, because we were on yesterday talking about Jeffrey Epstein, and you made a good point. Though, what's your gut? Because after you're gone, Rick Unger will be here, and we're going to start off with that topic. Yeah. So why don't we just start slightly here?
That's dirty. Okay, let's just break this down, right? The man tried to commit suicide, was put on suicide watch, then was taken off of suicide watch. Why? The man was supposed to be on 24/7 under 24-hour surveillance under security camera footage. He was taken off that surveillance. Why? Who? Where's the documentation? The man was supposed to be checked in with by prison guards at regular intervals. They stopped that check-in because the prison guards said they were complaining because there wasn't enough overtime to go around. Are you kidding me? For this guy, that high profile? What the hell? There is no way. I believe that was just incompetent negligence that led to his death. It might well be incompetent negligence, but I do not believe in negligence that is that beneficial to so many people, right? So when
did Hillary Clinton slip into the prison and kill him? That's the question I have. Because Trumpers are listening; they want to know that.
I do not believe the Clintons had opportunity to do such a thing. The people who had motive and opportunity are Donald Trump and Bill Barr. He was in federal custody. All of those roads lead to Bill Barr's desk. Now, here's the thing: when I get put your tinfoil hat on. Here's the thing. Look, I don't want a shipment of Reynolds Wrap to my house. I understand how I can be perceived as sounding. But the problem is that there has been no point since William Barr took the stage that he has done one thing to engender trust. There's not one thing he has done to engender credibility. Why would I trust him now? Why would I trust a damn thing out of William Barr's Justice Department? If you want to stop a conspiracy theory, if you want to stop the conspiracy theorists, you have to have credibility. You have to have respect. The Trump administration pissed that away and has been pissing that away for 2.5 years. So that's why I get to go on the radio and say,
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with Elie Mystal.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. The Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
Welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. Here with Elie Mystal, the last minute and a half. So, Elie, last thing here, immigration. They go in, they arrest 600 plus people, take them from their families. They've not arrested the employers who hired the people. What is going on?
Anybody who talks about immigration knows that if you want to stop illegal immigration, you have to stop the employers who hire them. He's friends with those employers. They're his buddies. They're the one going out to the Hamptons paying him $12 million at the Stephen Ross fundraiser. So, of course, he's not going to mess with them. He's going to exude this cruelty upon the immigrant community, not all of whom committed crimes. And that's what I wanted to end it on. There was on all the Sunday shows, they had the CBB guy running
Mark
around
Morgan,
talking about how, like, oh, her father committed a crime. No, he doesn't know that. This is what Republicans always remind us about, right? We have a presumption of innocence in this country. You're not supposed to jail a person, say that he committed a crime without a trial, without due process. That's what they did to these people. That's why so many of these people actually ended up getting released, because they didn't commit any crimes. They weren't here illegally. They were just brown looking at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's why they got pulled up off the street. So,
and for a statistic here, researchers at Syracuse University found that from April 2018 to March 2019, so the last year from April to March of last year, Trump administration prosecuted 0 companies for employing undocumented immigrants, only 11 individuals. And in that time, 120,000 people were prosecuted for illegal entry or reentry during that same time period. So it's
not an accident.
Right. It's going after the brown person who is struggling, who's just working to make ends meet,
not the white person who is exploiting them.
And who gives them money. So, Elie, thank you, my friend, for coming in so much. I really appreciate it. It's great chatting with you. Follow him on Twitter at
ELIENYC.
Elie, thanks very much, folks. We'll come back. Rick Ungro is going to join us. We'll talk about the white privilege portion of this show. No, we're not going to. He's going to be right back.